Hello and welcome to the Nursing and the Arts podcast. I'm your host, Susan J. Faris, MSN RN, SJF Communications. Here we will listen to stories from nurses that use the creative arts in their practice or in their personal lives. So just sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Well, hello everyone. I'm Susan J. Faris from SJF Communications, and I have a guest here today. I'm just so excited to have Alyssa Blake, RN. She's going to tell us now about all her letters after her name and her qualifications and what she's doing in nursing now, and then we'll get started with we're going to talk about healing through art, a guide for caregivers and patients. So welcome, Alyssa. It's so nice to see you today.
Thank you so much, Susan. Yeah, it's very nice to talk with everybody and talk about this important subject. So I have a bachelor's degree. I'm a registered nurse. Currently, I work as a research nurse. So I kind of work with different research trials, that kind of stuff. I also do some freelance writing on the side and some art that I really appreciate doing, which is why I'm here today. And I have some background working in hospital settings, in schools, and working in public health. I actually graduated during the middle of the pandemic in 2021. So have just kind of seen the change in nursing from that and in the world from that point of time. So,
well, congratulations.
I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, I was going to say, graduating during the pandemic and getting started in patient care must have been an immense, I can't even say what the word is, but profound experience for you. And it led you in some way to why we're here today. I wanted to let you know, or let our listeners, viewers know how we connected. Can you tell us how we connected and why?
Yeah, so I started doing freelance writing about a half year ago, and I was listening to the podcast. It's called Savvy Nurse podcast with Janine Kelbach. She runs a nursing writing agency called writern.net. And she had actually had Susan on to talk about her PR business and kind of that. So that was how I first got introduced to Susan. But then I also checked out her website and kind of what she really does. She does some haiku workshops and really emphasizes the power of poetry. And that really resonated with me. In addition to my experience as a nurse in my personal life, my dad was actually hospitalized for about 6 months in the last 2 years. And there was like a lot of ups and downs with that. Being in the ICU, being on a ventilator, he actually passed away several times and kind of came back to life. And during that time, art was a really big crutch for me. I'd always loved it since high school, had taken a pause in nursing school, but I found myself coming back to art to help me kind of process all of the emotions that were happening during those ups and downs and to help me stay resilient during this hard time and to help my family. So that was one thing that really drew me towards Susan to talk about the power of art for healing not only patients as it helped my father, but healing caregivers and others, especially with burnout and experiencing secondary trauma and that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm so proud of you. And thank you for reaching out to me. It was just such a nice surprise to have somebody appreciate what I do with the haiku workshops, as well as with my book. I've been a poet since like 1991. And what brings me a nice, memory is, well, a memory. When my dad had heart surgery, this is back in the early 90s, I remember bringing my little journal, sitting with my mom and writing down poetry while he was in the OR and just notes. And I drew a picture of what he'll look like with the tubes coming at, when he came out of the recovery room and that kind of thing. So art and poetry bind us, we're kindred spirits that way. And I really appreciate what you've been doing with your time, especially while you work and doing art and poetry at the same time. It's absolutely wonderful. So Alyssa, how does your poetry and or art help you cope? Like what kind of feelings do you have once you accomplish something or while you're working with something as far as a poem or a piece of art, visual art?
Yeah, so kind of like how Susan shared her story with her own father. specifically with my dad, I remember there was one incident where he actually had CPR done on him, and then I met him in the ER. He wasn't really conscious at this time. He was like on a ventilator. There was a lot of issues going on. But I remember during that time, I took out my phone and was started writing in my notes app, just like a poem to kind of express those emotions. And I think for me, making poetry or creating art pieces that I then kind of brought to my dad's room as like favorite memories, our pets, that kind of stuff. In the process of making those artworks, it's really helpful in terms of like expressing creativity and kind of unloading all of those emotions and frustrations, so as to not have kind of all those negative feelings bottled up. I also think it helps me to kind of reflect on what's happening, what am I feeling, kind of trying to process these really distressing events that I'm experiencing and to help relax. That's something that is so important to me. And I think by clearing out all of those negative emotions, it kind of allows hope and like inspiration to be fostered. And it provides me, when I did put, like, for example, what I was saying with the artworks, I would put them in his room and he would get to look at them even when we're not there. And some of his care team would come and see those artworks of a beautiful sunset, his garden that he is so proud of. It kind of provides a sense of community with other people and joy and like understanding, remembering those beautiful memories. So that's something that I really love about art. Its ability to bring people together, remember amazing things, and just have a sense of community. Right now, I have a side business called Smile Canvas Creations, where I create artworks for people, custom artworks, landscapes, pet portraits, that kind of thing. And my whole aim in doing that is to help bring joy to other people like I did for my family. I think it's so important. And I think one last thing to say is that as a nurse, a lot of the times in a hospital setting or just in nursing and medical care, it's more of a science-oriented thing, and an appreciation of the arts isn't really ever talked about or used to help other people and help us as caregivers. And I think that's so underappreciated and so important to kind of incorporate.
Absolutely. Bringing that art or making it for your dad while he could appreciate it must have meant so much to him. And to bring the community with it also, to have them appreciate it. It brings community together. I know that when I'm writing my poetry, I sometimes write it for expressing anger, fear, values clarification, just all kinds of things. For instance, during the pandemic, I wasn't working clinically because I don't work clinically as a nurse at this time or anymore, basically. But I wanted to do something for nurses because I kept reading stories of what they were doing. They were just heroes, sheroes. And so I was fearful about what was going to happen with all of us with the pandemic, angry when people were doing press conferences, for instance, and everybody touching the podium and not using hand sanitizer or anything. Like, why aren't you being careful, not wearing the masks? So expressing thoughts, fears, anger, values clarification, and then joy and happiness. For instance, I also am a nature photographer. So when I go out in nature and I have my phone or my camera, I'll capture something, either a flower or a shorebird or whatever. And sometimes I will write a haiku based on that. And that's called ekphrastic poetry, where you use visual art with, combining it with a haiku or a poem. So we both bring different experiences, but it's all the same. It makes us feel better. It makes people feel better. It expresses, it gets it all unloaded. I love that word, unload, because if you think about it, nurses and healthcare providers of many types have so many stories within them from their experiences of working with probably thousands of people. Where does it go? It's in there. So you release it with creative arts, whether it's visual art, as you do, poetry, journaling, even exercising. It could be an art, cooking, crafting. There's so many types. And that led me to start a group. It's very much in the infancy stage, but we're on Facebook, and it's Nursing and the Arts, so that we can focus on nurses that provide some kind of creative art in their life, either to share it with others or just keep it to themselves, that kind of thing. Great. This is a great discussion we're having here, Alyssa. Can you tell me about any other emotions that you have, or how visual art or poetry or any creative art can help with self-care of the caregiver, whether you're a informal caregiver taking care of family or in a professional capacity as a healthcare provider or other? I'm sure you have some
Yeah,
insight on this.
yeah. I mean, I think that's really important to kind of mention that too, how caregivers of all types, how it's really important and to kind of participate in self-care and help with stress and burnout that comes with caring for a loved one
Mm.
or caring for a patient. I think often informal caregivers like family members, it might not be recognized that they also go through a lot of hardships. Personally, in my experience, I was at my dad's bedside for 6, 7 months. And we've also, when we've taken him home, he's had a lot of things that have required a lot of care coordination, case management. I know it takes a really big toll on my mom. And I think it's important to recognize that those informal caregivers kind of require self-care. I would say, in addition to kind of what I discussed earlier about unloading emotions, I think that participating in art, creating art is really helpful in mindfulness and kind of grounding yourself and understanding what you're feeling emotionally. Even if it's not creating poetry or writing kind of haikus, anything like that, or creating visual art, just journaling and being cognizant of that. Like I have a 5-minute journal I do in the morning where you express gratitude, you recognize your wins. That can be helpful. I will also say when my dad was inpatient, it wasn't a chapel, but it was like a meditation prayer
Oh.
room. And
Mhm.
people, even if I'm not religious, but I remember I would go down there while I was visiting my dad inpatient to take a breath, have a calm space to recognize the emotions I was feeling, but not let
Sure.
that affect his care and my interaction with caregivers, because there was a lot of frustrating things, honestly, that happened in his care. But it was a moment to ground myself. And they also had like a writing book for people to leave, to write messages to their loved ones, even
Oh.
if their loved ones wouldn't see it, or write whatever they want. And I feel like
Right.
that was kind of a way of like loose expressive writing that was helpful for, again, just mindfulness, kind of understanding internally what's going on and trying to process that. Because I think a lot of the times we just try to slog through really traumatic experiences, understandably, because that's how you survive it in the moment. But there has to be some time where you kind of process and understand what's going on inside you. So I think helping with mindfulness, it can help in self-care in that way.
Absolutely. I just did a workshop last week with my haiku, and there was a woman who was in the front of the room. And I usually show my nature photography prompts to get people writing. Sometimes, most of the time, they write from my prompt. So they'll take a picture of flowers or, just a scene in my nature photography. Um, Sometimes they use that as a like initial, it's okay, you can let go and start writing. So they don't write about what they see with my photos, because I show about 20 or so photos. Well, this woman's mom passed away recently. She was 101 or 2 years old. And her haiku were 4 pages. I mean, she was crying right in front of me as I'm teaching the other people. And when I read it, I saw how her haiku was really talking to her mom, like, were there pearly gates? Did you see my brother that passed away when he was 2 years old? Things like that. And it was just letting her release all this pent up grief that didn't have a place to go until she came to my class. It made me feel so wonderful. And we didn't share it with the rest of the class. Sometimes we do that through the whole class if they share it with me, and then I compile it and we take pictures and we put it on my blog. But we kind of kept it between us. And then another woman was a bird watcher, and she said that my photos of the birds, gave her that capacity to start writing in the room. And she wrote about one particular bird and then her dog. So you never know what it's going to lead to. And there was a man in the room that did not want to show any of his work, but he says, "Oh, this is great." Like he was going and writing and writing and writing. So I kept it open with him that if he has any questions or he wants to share it later, just email me. The process of what I get from people in the community is just amazing. It fills my heart when someone gets it out there and either wants to share it or doesn't want to share it with the world, or can throw it away. It's a release. So that's a good point with the unloading. I just love that you said the word unloading, because we have so much that we carry. Pause.
Yeah, I think it's very cathartic. And I think, like you were saying, it's really important to give ourselves permission to kind of experience those emotions. And even if it isn't a cathartic release of grief, it can be a way to express gratitude. And like you were saying, for just your haikus that focus more on like and nature photography, just like really just appreciating the beautiful world we live in, it can be a way to do that too. So I just think it's very kind of there's a lot of variety and a lot of different things you can do with art, and I think as nurses it's very underutilized, so we can definitely use it to help ourselves, we can use it to help our patients. Like we can encourage like family members to kind of bring in things, memories that their family members would really appreciate, that would provide them comfort in rooms, to encourage their family members to have coloring books, have kind of paintings in their room that remind them of home, or journaling, books to read, crocheting, that kind of stuff. And then on the nurses end, it's really important we take care of ourselves so we can take care of others, and not just nurses, but like we were saying, informal caregivers. So on our end, we can also participate in those activities at work, whether it be like a bulletin board with coloring pages in a break room, whether it be a paint night that you have with coworkers afterwards. I think it's important to take the time for yourself to reflect on your emotions and participate in something that's creative. Again, as nurses, it's very like scientific. It's nursing is a science. So a lot of the times that creative component sometimes gets left out. But again, so integral to nursing practice, which focuses on holistic wellness of people and understanding. There are so many different things that go into somebody being well. So arts are really underappreciated and very important. So that's amazing that you shared those people got that benefit from your workshop. I think that's awesome that you're doing that.
And every time I do a workshop, it's totally different. It's all new people, all new strangers, that we're bringing each other together with that. So Alyssa, in terms of nursing theory, do you practice or utilize any of the nursing theorists in your work, either with your poetry or your art?
Yeah, so I think one important thing to note, as different nursing theorists, there's many different kind of theories that we use and that we learn when we're in school. I think one thing that really sticks out to me is Florence Nightingale's environmental theory. And for anybody that's not in the nursing world, she's basically like our messiah. Like she is like considered like the founder of modern nursing. And she has a very popular theory that discusses the importance of environmental factors on people's well-being and healing. And I have worked as a public health nurse, and public health really takes this concept and emphasizes it, that not only are our genetics or personal health choices contributing to our health, but also the environment that we live in. We need to make sure that it's calming, that it's clean, that kind of stuff. So I think that art really comes into that portion as well, even though it might not traditionally be seen, not interpreted that art could be a part of that. I think that it is an unorthodox way of looking at it, but it makes sense that kind of incorporating art into your surroundings can really improve your well-being, and incorporating hobbies into your activities during the day can help you feel healed and also help you feel well. So I think that's important. I know there are some other theorists, but that's really what I take my main inspiration from, the importance of kind of art in our environment and healing in that way, and improving your mindset.
Absolutely. There's another theory, Gene Watson's human caring theory. And I use caring, and also there's a theory of knowing by Carper. So there are different theorists in nursing that I incorporate kind of just extemporaneously. I'm not even thinking, but according to Watson, care is the core of nursing and includes interpersonal attempts to enhance and maintain health, humanity, and well-being. And remember that nurses and healthcare people in all fields need to take care of themselves as well, because they have so much that they're dealing with all the folks they care for. So that's very interesting, between these three that we've mentioned, that we are still utilizing the science of nursing theory as well as the art of nursing, because one of my poems, or one of the phrases in one of my poems says, when it's all said and done, there's no profession as diverse as the art and the science of being a nurse. There's definitely an art to being a nurse. You know, you have to use your spirit when you walk into the room and greet someone and assess them and care for them and coordinate for them and look out for any dangers or risks for them and that kind of thing. So yeah, theory is quite important to keep. And the nursing process, I know when I work, even in my workshops or when I work with clients in PR, I still use the nursing process: assessing, planning, implementing, evaluating, and reevaluating, etc. Great point. Great point. So, Alyssa, when you're creating your art or your poetry, what happens emotionally to you? I mean, and are you structured when you start working on something, or is it something that just inspires you at a whim? Um, with me, I need to be inspired when I write or when I take a photo. I don't just take photos. I have to look and use my senses and mindfulness and all that. And then I capture a moment in time, either with my photography or my poetry, and write about it. And I reflect and I rework it. How about yourself? What is your process? Are you structured or otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, I will say I've tried to structure out time blocks in the past so that it's more consistent. Like I was saying, I really enjoyed it when I was in high school and I actually did like AP art, but then in nursing school, I took a break because it just wasn't sustainable. And I'm like, wow, I really should do art more often. Then my dad was hospitalized and I started doing it more often. I have tried to structure it in the past. I feel like that's not very helpful for me because I also work the same way, that I have to be inspired by something. So it's like there's a lot of like, there will be dry times that I'm like, I don't produce anything for months. And then I'll produce like 3 or 4 artworks in 1 month when I feel really inspired and I have lots of free time. To answer your question, yeah, I would say that it goes based off of like inspiration. I also will say if I'm experiencing lots of intense emotions, like during a stressful time, even though I might have less free time, I usually try to make the time to do the art. I feel like I need to unload my emotions by doing it. So those are the times that I usually produce art. And when I'm creating it, again, it helps me be mindful and feel grounded and kind of unload all those hard emotions cathartically, kind of just really release everything and feel better. And after I'm done making it, and if I'm able to like put it up somewhere, if it reminds somebody of something beautiful, like a nice memory,
Right.
if I'm able to help out anybody in that way, I feel proud and it makes me feel happy that I've made other people feel something with my art, whether it's inspired to do something with it or remembering, like I said, like a wonderful memory. It makes me happy to to know that my art affects other people. For example, like with my business that I have for art, I've created several pet portraits of pets that have passed away. And for example, there was one dog named Buddy who I did a colored pencil drawing of him in the leaves, and he actually passed away like a month after I created that drawing, unfortunately. But the people I gave it to were so grateful that they had that memory
Sure, sure.
preserved. And it's something they put on their mantle and they always look to. So it's just something that I feel proud of after I create it. During the time when I am creating them, sometimes there's like some turmoil going on, and it's a way to like sometimes relax or kind of unload those hard emotions. But after I feel proud, I usually feel inspired to create more. I feel a sense of community with other people. Those are all things that I really, really enjoy. So
Yeah, and these are trends in our talk today. You know, the connection with other people, feeling relaxed, feeling mindful. Question: when you do your pet portraits, do you take a photo of the pet first and then go from the photo? Is that how that works, or do you do it while they're sitting there alive? Or
Yeah, so I usually use reference photos and we'll look at a few before we choose a couple. And there can be like I can change backgrounds or kind of reimagine different things in the portrait. But it's based off of like a reference photo usually.
I see. Um, during or in the, after this, I will put this in a blog post along with your website and how to find you and, you know, where you are on social media and such. But it's fascinating that we're connected, and it was from a podcast, and a podcast is another creative outlet for nurses to do, or people to do, right, to get their stress out. Um, Hopefully we can add some resources to our blog post as well, and maybe some articles on the nature of art and caring in healthcare, and the poetry as well. Is there anything else that you'd want to bring up? Any last thoughts?
Um, I think for people that might not feel like they're an artist, and so they might not want to, for example, do like visual arts, or they might not feel like a poet, so they might not want to kind of write in that way. I think that's okay that you are not a professional. That's not the point of like participating in these creative expressions. It's just to help yourself. So I would say don't be afraid. You don't have to be Bob Ross. You can, as long as it helps you to relax, have a cute little date night with painting, or a paint and sip night, like I was saying, with coworkers. Just journaling, 5-minute journal. You can pick them up at a lot of different stores. Expressive writing, that kind of stuff. You don't have to be a professional for it to work for you. So I would definitely encourage you to participate in that and explore your creative side, even if you haven't done it in the past.
I think it's great. If you're a nurse and you're on Facebook, please join the Nursing and the Arts group that we have, and I'll put the link for that on as well. I just think this is a fascinating beginning conversation. I just hope that, people, whether you're a caregiver or a potential caregiver, which we all might be, or a healthcare provider or a nurse, whoever, we hope that you value the arts like we do, and use the creative arts for self-expression, self-care, stress management, mindfulness, unloading, all these keywords that we've been using today, because we care about you, and we just want the world to heal with art, whether it's visual, creative, literary, whatever way. Thank you so much for joining us, Alyssa. It's been a pleasure getting to know you. We're all across the country too. You're in Massachusetts, I'm in California, and here we go. We're starting a movement, I hope.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Take care. Thank you so much for listening to the Nursing and the Arts podcast. We loved having you here. And don't forget to sign up for our Facebook group, Nursing and the Arts, as well. And for information, you can email info@sjfcommunications.com.